Hi everyone, thanks for coming back to Cardvoyant. I'm Chris and I'm your Cardvoyant, and let's learn more about the Major Arcana. All right, so now we come to that other scary card, the other card that sort of freaks people out when people see it, and that is the Devil card. Now the Devil card is probably a card that is a little bit more challenging than some of the other cards. It's not about Satan, and it's not about an actual devil. It is about our sort of shadow selves, the parts of ourselves that tend to be self-destructive or negative. When you're reading for somebody else, it's about the parts of themselves that are like that. It can be about other influences in your life that are bringing that sort of negativity into your existence. This is about the way in which we chain ourselves to certain negative or very challenging things. You can see in the figure in this, of course, you've got this devil figure with the bat wings and the horns and the hooves and everything, the fire. But please notice the two figures on here who are naked, symbolizing that sort of openness, that vulnerability. And as you can see, they're starting to take on devil characteristics with horns and with the tails. But most importantly, they are chained to the devil's chair. Okay. Now these chains are loose. They can still take them off. But this card speaks to the way that we chain ourselves with, it often speaks about addictions. And that can be anything from drugs and food to people, to situations, to that feeling of being stuck in something that isn't good for us. Okay? But the message here is that this is self-imposed. Even when it's not talking about you being in a literal jail, right? This is talking about you being chained to something that you can easily break away from. The chains are, you can take off these chains. And maybe easily is not a fair word, but you have the ability to take off these chains and to move away from it into something more positive. The first thing that you have to do, though, is to understand and to recognize the ways in which you're shackled. When you do tarot readings for yourself or for other people, often you will say things and you can see people nodding or acknowledging it, or they will actually say, because they so often speak to things that we know or we know in our hearts, but it's hard to bring to the surface and acknowledge. With the Devil card, you get this immediacy of you have to recognize this. It's kind of like wake up and see the chains around you and let's work to take them off, okay? The easy thing to remember when you look at the Devil card and when people are freaked out about it is just to think of that, this sort of, these chains, you know, these chains, that kind of thing. That's how to remember it. Think of being chained to a person, an addiction, an idea, a place, all these different situations that are hindering positivity in your life, but that you can, or your client can, break away from. Speaking of breaking away, we have the next card, which is the Tower card. And the Tower card is another card that people often think of as scary. I more often get this in reading for people when something has already happened or is in the midst of happening. It rarely, although sometimes, it rarely comes as like a sort of a premonition. It's more something that's in the process of happening or something that has happened. And the Tower is all about things just falling apart. As you can see, the figures are in this card are leaping from a tower, a building that is on fire and is going to collapse. This lightning bolt of energy is coming and hitting it. There's the crown that's sort of fallen off of it, and these people are in free fall. I mean, and you know they're going to crash. This card is more than any other card in the tarot deck about drastic upheaval, about change, about things falling apart, about your life or a life seeming to be in shambles. But as you know, sometimes, all the time, when something is not working or is, and so often you feel it, you know, like you're unhappy, you have to sort of burn down your life in order to build up something. So you're burning down this old life that isn't serving you. It definitely is not serving you, in order to build up something that is serving you, something that's new. I mean, look at this tower. You know, it's on this craggy cliff. It's in this dark of night. You know, this is not something that is serving you, but it has to go in order to build up something that is like new and bright and happy, right? So this tower, yeah, it can be a really difficult card, and people that get it are often going through something that's very difficult. But the thing to remember is that it's going to bring forth something new. There's a purpose. There's a purpose to this suffering that people are going through, because it's going to allow them to build something new and clean and fresh and positive. Okay. And like I said, sometimes this is actually quite often in readings, it's something that I will get to acknowledge what people have already gone through. But we cling to it, right? You've gone through this traumatic thing and you cannot stop thinking about it, or you can't stop thinking about the life that you used to have, or, you know, how it seems suddenly, even though you weren't that happy, it suddenly seems like it was really good. And so it's about releasing that and realizing that there's a purpose to everything that happened, even if it's hard to recognize at that moment. So the tower, easy to remember. Think of burning down your life. Think of things completely crashing and burning, and you can see it. I mean, it couldn't be clearer in this card. So that'll be an easy one to remember. Now, fittingly, after the Tower card, we get the Star card. It's like, whew, thank goodness we get the Star card. The Star card is really a wonderful card. This is a card about faith and hope and renewal. You can see in the card this idea of water sort of feeding the earth. So it's this renewal that the figure in the card is bringing to the earth. Stars in general are just what you think of. There's this illumination. There's this rebirth. That's why the figure in the card, again, is naked, because it's this vulnerability of being open to everything, of new opportunity. It's about learning to be happy, really, and to rebuild, and to understand to re-understand the goodness and happiness and hope and peace and happiness and, you know, goodness of the world. You can see like the tree in the background and the bird. You can imagine the peaceful setting, you know, of the water and the earth and the renewal and the beauty that surrounds us. And this is the idea of starting over, like the process has started and it's good, okay? So the thing that's easy to remember about this card, because it's a star, and just think of a star, you know, we're all stars. Our possibilities are endless. That's what the star is about. Now, the Moon card is interesting because the Moon card talks about our inner selves, the deepest part of ourselves, almost our shadow selves, but not quite in a really negative way. It's more about intuition. It's about connecting with those unseen parts of ourselves, the part that we don't always let out. You see this, whenever you see this water tends to be about that inner self, right? So you have the figures gathered around the water, the lobster coming out of the water. So this is like the acknowledgement of our inner selves. Now, this can often be about, karma, or about intuition that we don't completely acknowledge or share. This card can be about that. It can also be about dreams, the unconscious part of ourselves, or delving into our own unconscious. Another aspect of this card has to do with creativity. It has to do with that sort of artistic impulse, this idea of the ways in which our own creativity is connected very much to our deep inner selves. So it can talk about artistic nature. You'll sometimes get this in reading for people who are artists of some sort, and they're struggling with bringing forth that next piece of art, whether it's writing or singing or actual painting or some sort of artistic endeavor. But it is that feeling of bringing from the unconscious, like just as you see the figure coming out of the water, bringing it into the open and into the sunlight that is down the road a bit. So when you see the moon, think of the way to remember it is to think of the ways in which the moon differs from the sun, right? The moon is more hidden. The moon is about these things that are hidden. The moon is about our unconscious and how we bring things from our unconscious into the light of day. And with that, there are only 3 cards left to learn in the Major Arcana. So come back again for the last in our series of videos on the Major Arcana. Bye-bye.